2. Did Lucifer ever lie or kill anyone in the Bible? Christian tradition paints Lucifer as the ultimate deceiver and murderer, but a close reading of the Bible shows no record of Lucifer lying or killing anyone. The only recorded conversation Lucifer has in the Old Testament is in Eden, and everything he said turned out to be true. There is no biblical passage where Lucifer is caught lying. In contrast, God himself admits to deception, Ezekiel 14:9. And if the prophet be deceived when he hath spoken a thing, I the Lord have deceived that prophet. 2 Thessalonians 2:11. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusion so that they will believe the lie. If lying is evil, why would God engage in it? Nowhere in the Bible does Lucifer directly kill anyone. However, God is repeatedly described as destroying nations, causing plagues, and killing people. A few examples of God killing people. 1. The Great Flood. God drowns the entire world, including innocent children and animals, Genesis 7:21 through 23. 2. Sodom and Gomorrah. God incinerates 2 cities, Genesis 19:24 to 25. 3. The firstborn of Egypt. God kills thousands of Egyptian babies, Exodus 12:29. 4. The Canaanite genocides. God commands the Israelites to slaughter entire nations, Deuteronomy 20:16 through 17. 5. Uzzah's death. God strikes Uzzah dead for trying to stabilize the Ark of the Covenant, 2 Samuel 6:6 to 7. Jesus even acknowledges that Satan does not kill, but that God has the power to destroy the soul. Do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Matthew 10:28. This implies that God, not Lucifer, is responsible for eternal destruction. 3. Who is the true villain of the Bible? Christianity often presents a dualistic conflict between God and Lucifer. But if we analyze their actual biblical actions, we see a paradox. This challenges the traditional notion of Lucifer as evil and God as good. Lucifer encouraged knowledge, which ultimately led to the birth of civilization. God punished knowledge, expelling humans and making their lives miserable. The Bible itself shows that Lucifer is more of a liberator of knowledge, while God enforces control through fear and punishment. Conclusion. Who was right in Eden? 1. God told Adam and Eve they would die immediately if they ate the fruit, but they did not. 2. The serpent said they would not die and that their eyes would be opened, and this was true. 3. God confirmed that Adam and Eve became like gods, proving the serpent's words. Lucifer has no biblical record of lying or killing, while God destroys entire cities, floods the earth, and sends plagues. This raises the ultimate question. If the traditional story is flipped, if Lucifer was telling the truth and God was misleading humans, what does that say about the nature of good and evil in the Bible? Could it be that the Bible has misrepresented the roles of its 2 central characters? Perhaps Lucifer was not a villain, but a figure who offered knowledge and enlightenment, while God was a jealous ruler who wished to keep humanity ignorant. If we follow the evidence within the biblical text, Lucifer did not deceive. God did. If God knows the end from the beginning, does he truly love mankind? The Bible describes God as all-knowing, all-powerful, and perfectly good, yet the events of creation and the suffering of mankind seem to contradict this. If God knew Adam and Eve would sin, if he knew Lucifer would tempt them, if he knew humanity would suffer for generations, then how can we justify calling him a loving Father? This raises several troubling questions. 1. Why create humans on the same earth where Lucifer and his fallen angels roamed, knowing they would be tempted? 2. If Adam and Eve were childlike in understanding, why did God allow a master deceiver, Lucifer, access to them? 3. Why did God place the forbidden tree in the middle of Eden and even point it out to Adam and Eve? 4. If God knew Job would suffer at Satan's hands, why allow it? Wasn't this a divine gamble with a man's life? Let's break these questions down using biblical references and logical reasoning. 1. Did God set Adam and Eve up to fail? God is described as omniscient, all-knowing, in Isaiah 46:10. I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. This means that before God even created Adam and Eve, He already knew they would disobey Him. Yet, in Genesis 2:9, He deliberately placed the forbidden tree in the middle of the Garden of Eden. The Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. In the middle of the garden were the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Why put such a dangerous tree in the very place where innocent, childlike humans were living? Why place it within reach instead of hiding it or removing it altogether? If God was all-knowing, wouldn't He know that placing the tree in the garden would inevitably lead to Adam and Eve's downfall? This is like a parent placing poison in the middle of a child's playroom, pointing it out to them, and then blaming them for touching it. 2. Lucifer was already a master deceiver, so why let him tempt Adam and Eve? According to Christian tradition, Lucifer had already convinced a third of the angels to rebel against God, Revelation 12:4-9. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil, and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Revelation 12:9. If Lucifer was capable of deceiving heavenly angels, how could Adam and Eve, who had no knowledge of good and evil, stand a chance against him? This means, 1. God knowingly placed His newly created humans in the same domain as a powerful deceiver. 2. Adam and Eve were innocent, yet they were left unprotected against a being who had already deceived divine beings. 3. God did not intervene to stop Lucifer's temptation, even though He knew exactly what would happen. This raises a disturbing possibility. Was this all part of God's plan? If God's plan was to test humanity, then He knowingly created a rigged test where failure was guaranteed. If God wanted obedience, then why allow a deceiver to manipulate humans so easily? If a teacher deliberately puts a first grader in a PhD-level exam and then punishes them for failing, is that justice? 3. Why did God gamble with Job's life? The book of Job presents one of the clearest examples of God allowing suffering for no clear reason. In Job 1:8-12, God and Satan have a conversation about Job's righteousness. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." Job 1:8. Satan challenges this, arguing that Job is only righteous because God has blessed him. So God allows Satan to take everything from Job, his family, his wealth, and his health, to test his loyalty. The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, everything he has is in your power, but on the man himself do not lay a finger." Job 1:12. Later, in Job 2:6, God allows Satan to physically afflict Job. The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he is in your hands, but you must spare his life." This presents serious moral problems. Why would a loving God engage in a bet with Satan over a man's suffering? Why does God need Job to be tested when He already knows Job's heart? Why were Job's innocent children and servants killed as part of this test? This makes God seem less like a loving father and more like a powerful ruler engaging in cruel experiments for his own satisfaction. Imagine a king making a wager with his enemy, allowing his most faithful servant to be tortured just to prove a point. This is exactly what happens in Job. This contradicts God's supposed love and justice. If Satan is evil for bringing suffering, why is God justified in allowing it? 4. Did God create humanity just to watch it suffer? The pattern of suffering in the Bible suggests that God not only knew humanity would fall, but he allowed suffering to persist through history. 1. Cain kills Abel, Genesis 4:8. The first murder happens almost immediately after creation, showing the failure of moral order. 2. God destroys the world with a flood, Genesis 7:21-23. If God knew mankind would become corrupt, why create them in the first place? 3. God commands genocides, Deuteronomy 20:16-17. He orders the extermination of entire nations, including children. 4. Hell was created as eternal punishment, Matthew 25:41. Even though God knew some humans would end up there, he still created it. If God truly loved mankind, why did he allow unimaginable suffering across human history? From a logical standpoint, the biblical portrayal of God's actions contradicts the idea of him being loving and just. First, God knowingly placed humanity in a dangerous world with Lucifer. Second, God set up a test that Adam and Eve were guaranteed to fail. Third, God gambled with Job's suffering just to prove a point to Satan. Fourth, God created a world where suffering, war, and death have defined human history. If a father builds a house with hidden traps and dangerous creatures, then places his children inside, knowing they will be hurt, would he be considered loving? If we apply the same moral standard to God, his actions seem more like a ruler who enjoys testing and punishing his creation rather than a caring father. This calls into question the very foundation of biblical theology. Did God create humans with genuine love, or were they created to serve a divine experiment? Is God's concept of justice fundamentally different from human morality? Or is the biblical narrative simply a human attempt to explain suffering rather than a reflection of divine love? The God of the Bible does not act like a being of infinite love, but rather like a ruler who enjoys control, punishment, and testing his creation in ways that guarantee suffering. If we are to judge God by his actions rather than by religious tradition, then the evidence suggests that he is not the loving Father that Christianity claims him to be. If God is all-knowing, why did he allow confusion and contradictions in the Bible? The Bible is often claimed to be divinely inspired, yet it is filled with contradictions, moral dilemmas, and errors that have led to thousands of denominations, religious conflicts, and endless debates. If Jesus had to come because humans failed to correctly interpret God's words in the Old Testament, then why did God allow the same problem to persist in the New Testament? If God is truly all-knowing and perfect, wouldn't he have ensured that his message was delivered in a way that left no room for confusion? This raises several profound questions. 1. Why does God need humans to write for him? Couldn't he inscribe his words in the sky? 2. Why does the New Testament contradict itself, just like the Old Testament? 3. If God foresaw that divine inspiration would lead to confusion, why not communicate directly? 4. Why are there thousands of Christian denominations, each claiming to have the true interpretation of the Bible? Let's examine these questions using biblical passages and logical analysis. Structure 1. If God can create rainbows, why not write his own words? God supposedly created the entire universe by merely speaking. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Genesis 1:3. God also etched the 10 Commandments in stone with his own finger. The tablets were the work of God. The writing was the writing of God, engraved on the tablets. Exodus 32:16. This proves that God is fully capable of writing his own message. Yet he chose to rely on human authors, flawed, biased, and contradictory, to record his words. Why? Why does God need ghostwriters if he can speak directly to humanity? If God can write in stone, why not inscribe his final message in a way that no one could alter, misinterpret, or manipulate? If he can create the rainbow, Genesis 9:13, why not display divine instructions in the sky for all to see? This creates a contradiction. God is all-powerful, yet he leaves his most important message in human hands, ensuring confusion. God is perfect, yet his written word is filled with errors, contradictions, and inconsistencies. If God truly wanted a clear, undisputed message, he would have ensured it was delivered in a way that required no interpretation. 2. Why does the New Testament contradict itself just like the Old Testament? If Jesus came to correct misunderstandings of the Old Testament, then why does the New Testament introduce just as much contradiction and confusion? Example 1. Is salvation by faith alone or by works? Faith alone. For it is by grace you have been saved, through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. Ephesians 2:8-9. Faith plus works. Greater than. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save them? James 2:14. You see that a person is considered righteous by what they do and not by faith alone. James 2:24. This direct contradiction has caused centuries of debate between different Christian groups. Catholics emphasize works, Protestants emphasize faith, yet both claim to be based on the same Bible. Here's example 2. Who saw the resurrected Jesus first? Matthew 28:1-10. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary see Jesus first. Mark 16:9. Mary Magdalene alone sees Jesus first. Luke 24:13-31. Two disciples on the road to Emmaus see Jesus first. John 20:14-18. Mary Magdalene sees Jesus first, but in a different way than described in Matthew and Mark. If God inspired these texts, why do they contradict each other on such an important event? Example 3. Did Judas die by hanging or by falling? Hanging. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. Matthew 27:5. Falling and bursting open. With the payment he received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong, his body burst open, and all his intestines spilled out. Acts 1:18. If the New Testament was divinely inspired, how do these errors exist? This proves that the same contradictions that plague the Old Testament also exist in the New Testament, despite the claim that Jesus came to clarify God's Word. 3. If God knew humans would misinterpret the Bible, why not communicate directly? In 1 Corinthians 14:33, Paul claims, "For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints." Yet the Bible itself is the single most divisive book in human history. Over 45,000 Christian denominations exist today, each interpreting the Bible differently. The Bible has led to wars, persecution, and inquisitions, all based on conflicting interpretations. Even the most devout scholars cannot agree on key doctrines like salvation, baptism, and the nature of God. If God is not the author of confusion, then why did he allow his perfect book to cause so much division? Wouldn't an all-knowing God have foreseen this and ensured his message was delivered in a universal, unmistakable way? Instead, he left it in the hands of men, ensuring that some people would add, remove, or alter scriptures. Some people would use the Bible to justify slavery, genocide, and persecution. Some people would create new religions based on their interpretations, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. If a human teacher gave students a book so poorly written that every student interpreted it differently, would we say that teacher was competent? 4. Why does God need humans to write, read, and interpret His own words? Throughout history, God has relied on fallible humans to deliver His supposed perfect message. 1. Moses wrote the law, Torah, yet different versions of the Torah exist. 2. Prophets recorded God's messages, many of which contradicted each other. 3. New Testament writers claim divine inspiration, yet their accounts contradict each other. If God can part the Red Sea, Exodus 14:21, rain fire from heaven, 1 Kings 18:38, and resurrect the dead, John 11:43-44, then why does He need human messengers to communicate His words? The logical answer, if God truly inspired the Bible, He would have ensured clarity. The fact that the Bible is confusing, contradictory, and causes endless debate suggests that it was written by men, not God. Did God set up a system destined for failure? The Bible, which claims to be God's Word, is one of the most misunderstood, debated, and divisive books in history. If God were truly all-knowing and all-powerful, wouldn't He have 1. Written His own words in a universal, visible way rather than relying on men? 2. Prevented contradictions from corrupting His message? 3. Ensured that only one true interpretation existed, preventing the creation of thousands of conflicting denominations? Instead, the Bible is filled with errors, contradictions, and confusion, making it seem far more like a human-made book than divine revelation. If we judge God by His actions rather than by religious assumptions, then the evidence suggests He either failed to communicate clearly or the Bible was never truly inspired by Him in the first place. We have no interest in making any religion look bad. We are only choosing Christianity as the most tolerant of criticism. And it's not because we are worried about our safety, but we are worried about the safety of ordinary individuals who would go out there arguing religion with the information from this article. We are only trying to wake humans up to the importance of spirituality instead of religion. We are trying to help us all understand the need to know the truth, to seek the truth, to proclaim the truth. To help people understand that the visible arms of government are executive, legislature, and judiciary. But the invisible hands are the media, the formal education system, and religion. The visible hands are used for physical coercion, forcing individuals to live in a certain way, behave in a certain way, and if they don't, they get arrested, tried, and sent to prison. But the invisible hand is for influence, social programming, making you willingly behave in a certain way. That makes you think you are acting of your own will. Meanwhile, your will is being programmed through the words and the visuals you consume from the formal education system, the media, and religion. And if they let you make enough money, have enough for you to sit back and not work, maybe for a year, maybe you would be asking these questions, doing these researches, if they are not flooding your free time with sports entertainment, music entertainment, movies, daytime TV show, late-night TV show, reality TV show, soap operas, seasonal movies, or films that distract you from actually doing sober reflections, thinking deeply, meditating on things that matter. Maybe you would be asking these questions, doing these researches, and finding these answers. But since they wouldn't let that happen, we are helping you do this. And we are hoping that for once in your lifetime, you will do critical and objective thinking for yourself. When you ate whatever fruits from whatever tree, they said, you became a god. A god has independent choice. A god has a mind of his or her own. A god can reach his own decisions. A god can independently make choices. A god can do right and do wrong. Be a god and do not let anyone control how you think or what you think. Think for yourself. Find answers for yourself. Make decisions for yourself and live the life that you want for yourself. That is God. We cannot sustain this without you, so we expect that you like and subscribe to our channel. and whatever other gifts or support you feel like giving to us will be appreciated. Until next time, stay safe and stay informed.